So when I was younger, I'd always make these little characters, these little things that came out of my mind, and they helped me through so much in life. And what I wanted to do when I was little is to bring these guys to life, to really make them alive, to make them my own, and bring them to the rest of the world and share it. Now that I'm older, I get to bring these guys to life with the technology and the knowledge that I now have. My name is BrigitteMarusic, and I'm an illustrator and a graphic designer. Whenever you're young and you tell people you want to grow up to be an artist, they really look at you in a kind of an odd way and think, it's not going to happen, kid. You know, you're wasting your time. Or, when you're young, they say, oh, that's great, kid. And, by the time you get older, they expect you to really change that. I remember being in class and the teacher asking us, what do we want to be when we grow up? And we went around the room. Some people wanted to be doctors. Some people wanted to be head physicians. Some people wanted to have, these really more adult-oriented jobs. And when it came to me, I said I was an artist. And I remember feeling that almost kind of shame at the time for that. They had these more expected goals, and all I could fish out of my mouth was an artist. I didn't really know exactly how, as an artist, I wanted to be, or where I wanted to go with it, but I did know that I wanted to draw, and I wanted to create, and I wanted to bring things to life. So I didn't let it discourage me. I kept drawing, I kept working at it, I kept practicing day in and day out. I would watch tutorials online, I'd read sketchbooks and all of that, just to better myself. I'd make sure I'd even take classes in human anatomy, just to get a little bit better and a better understanding of the work and ideas. In middle school is more of where I could figure out where my art was starting to go. At least there were signs now when I look back. When I look back, a lot of my work had a lot of more anthropomorphic characteristics to the humans. There would be humans with ears and tails, and for some reason that type of stuff really lured me in. The idea of building an animal into more a humanistic state. I started looking at a lot of work online and becoming inspired by other artists that had certain characteristics to their work that really kind of related to me. I wanted to be a bit more like them. My art kind of took a turn when I started really trying to focus in on one particular style that would please everyone else around me, but not really certainly please me. I saw people getting this kind of internet fame, off the stuff they would draw that would be a little bit more pleasing to certain viewers, and I wanted that fame too. I started really trying to work hard at getting that kind of style, something that wasn't really my own, but I wanted it to be mine, and to get fame, to get those likes, those faves, everything. That became more important to me than the actual art style itself. As college came around, I started figuring out that I wanted to relate my work to my own self. I didn't have much time to draw, and what I did draw was usually just required from class. It wouldn't be until I took my first figure drawing class at SEC that I would learn where I'd want to go with my artistic style. As I started to learn more about the human body and its anatomy and the bones and the muscles and the way they work together, I really wanted to connect that into my own work. My style soon began to really have this more humanistic liking to it. It was still an anthropomorphic, but it was really starting to get it heavier on a humanistic form. The muscles and the bones all started looking more real, and the detail to the face, in which I was able to warp this animalistic face into a more humanistic face with a combination of muscles and bones, was starting to be more appealing to my liking. The real struggle for me was how to get my work to fit in with the graphic world. I began taking my illustrations, putting them in Photoshop, and trying to warp them, draw over them, and whatnot. And I just wasn't getting that effect that I wanted. I was looking at artists' work from the past. I was taking a look at Rembrandt's work, Michelangelo's. I was looking at the masters, and I was enjoying the way their figures were looking. The way they had this nice detail to them, but it was still, you could see the hard sketches below. Every little line that they decided between whether to go with this line or that line. I enjoyed the choice and bit of color that was used for that. And I wanted to apply that to my own. I started working harder at that. One day I was messing around with one of my sketches that I had taken, a very light sketch, into Photoshop. And I was messing around with some of the layers. I was drawing on top of it with some colors. One day I was messing around with one of my sketches that I had taken, a very light sketch, into Photoshop. And I was messing around with some of the layers. I was drawing on top of it with some colors. and I was messing around with some of the layers. One of the layers I came by was called Vivid Light, and that little Vivid Light layer really warped these colors in such a way that it helped darken my sketch lines and really made them pop while still adding this color to them. As an end result, it looked like I had inked it by hand and used watercolor to fill it in, and I was completely satisfied with it. Although the colors were hard to work with, since you would use these really dark colors and they would come out really, really watered down, pale colors. So I had to learn how to use the color palette in a whole new way as I would draw and work on my pieces. As you can see with this image, studio pose, I did do that. I would take a small sketch and bring it into Photoshop. From there, as you can see with Kevin here, the goat, as you can see, there's multiple lines in there that I did not erase and want to keep in instead. When coloring in these images, I try to stick to the idea of how I want these images to look. I want them to have this kind of watercolored effect, but I want them to also resemble something that would have been more of a traditional piece of work, something that you would have seen in a later day. My mundane life is filled with a lot of inspiration. From music to movies to the social life I live every day, I'm filled with inspiration and new ways to create. Let's take a look at one of my other drawings, Global Concept. It features my character Rocco, a little raccoon character, filled with dreadlocks and a more hippie aspect. Rocco was inspired by more of a subculture that promotes self-love and a lot of peace for all. The image itself was inspired by the song written by Robert D. Long called Global Concept. The concept of having had lived your life to the fullest is what plays out in this song. Rocco himself is a character that really doesn't live with any regrets. He lives his life to the fullest at all times. As you can see, I use the same layer effect, Vivid Light layer, in order to get that whole watercolored effect on Rocco. The color choice that I used for this piece, I wanted it to resemble that of peace, something that had a neutral standing point, nothing that was violent or dark. I wanted it to be happy. I wanted it to be simple at the same time. Self-love is important, and that's what I learned through my art. From the time that I went through wanting to be something that I wasn't, to the time that I finally figured out that it was more important for me to do the work that I wanted to do, and not that just pleased everyone else around me. It showed me how to love myself in the work that I made, and what was true to me as well. I want you to watch me. I want you to see the work that I will do, the work that will be mine. I want you to be blown away by what I will make in the future, and I promise you it'll be true to me.